God wants you to experience His victory. Do you believe God can give you victory?
Lisa, thank you so much for being here today. We were just talking a moment ago how much I enjoy this moment in my day every week when this rolls around because we get to hear another amazing story. And so I'm just so grateful. We're so grateful that you've come to share today. So tell us a little bit about your life and the ministry God has called you and your family to.
Sure. Paul and I were called to CMA, which is Caribbean Ministries Association, 15 years ago this year. Paul came to be the director, and when God calls the husband, He also calls the wife. And we've actually served in the Caribbean for over 20 years as missionaries first, and then Paul came to CMA as the director 15 years ago. And it's one of those things that when God calls you to a people group, you never get over it. And the Caribbean are those people for us. We can be in an airport, we can be anywhere and hear an accent that we know is an island accent and start walking towards it. We have to know where they're from. So we train pastors and church leaders in the Caribbean. We take the training to them. Most pastors in the Caribbean are bivocational, can't come to the States and will never come, but they don't have any access to training to pastor their churches and shepherd their people. And so we get to be the hands and feet in that way and take it to them.
Now, some people, when they hear Caribbean, and I got to say that this is really sort of my default as well, when they first hear that, they think tropical, somewhat ideal, magical. I mean, it's like where everybody wants to go on vacation, right?
Right.
So
Sure.
talk about how the life, for those who really live in the Caribbean, differs from what maybe we might see if we're down there on a vacation.
Sure, we call that the backside of the postcard. A lot of people do have a paradise idea. We've probably been told hundreds of times, well, I wish God would call me to the Caribbean. And we say, well, we're taking applications. Just because we do need missionaries to go. There's lots of islands. Island life is very isolating. A lot of poverty. And a lot of the people see tourists. They come and take. They give nothing back. And so we have to overcome that even when we go in and for training because we want to give instead of take from them. And that's a whole different mindset for the nationals. Now, it is beautiful. God has done amazing things there. And, of course, the people are beautiful as well. And so, yeah, we fight what we call the back of the postcard mentality to understand why we do what we do and where we do it. It's an area of the world that a lot of people never think about. They just fly over or cruise through and take a vacation and then they go home. So for us, it's important to share the needs of that area and to be a part of meeting those needs in the Caribbean.
What has that looked like, and how have you found God to be victorious in that ministry there?
Well, we've seen lots of victories with many, many pastors who've been trained, nationals reaching nationals. We've seen church leaders plant churches and start churches for their own people. We've seen people from our country, America, see the vision and step up and become missionaries to go meet that need. We've seen victory after victory. We've seen chaos. I think that's a part of this as well.
Talk about that, because I know that the last few years with COVID and some other events going on in the Caribbean, what that has been like.
Sure. Every year there's a hurricane season in the Caribbean. And so in 2019, Hurricane Dorian, the worst recorded hurricane in the Caribbean, came through one of the islands that we train on, Abaco, and destroyed the island. It was a Category 5, and many, many deaths. Entire villages were destroyed. We had missionaries on the ground there, and honestly, we didn't know if they were alive for about 6 days before we heard from them. And thankfully, the Lord preserved their life, and they came back to the States. And then we were challenged with the ability to minister to the people there to get supplies back. The airports were destroyed. We couldn't get things in to them. It was a very, very frustrating process for us, especially Paul as the leader. And then sadly, right after that, in March 2020, the whole world shut down with COVID. And we couldn't do anything, literally. We couldn't go there. We couldn't leave here. And it looked like ultimate chaos for the people. Not only them, but all the training areas that we were in. We could no longer travel. We could no longer send people. We could no longer train people in person. Our missionaries had to come back. We just had a very difficult time doing what God had called us to do. And there were days where we thought, is this the end of CMA? Is this the Lord shutting down what He raised up? And we'll just have to wait and see. And wait is a very difficult word. So, in the midst of that chaos, classes were offered online once the electricity and things were restored. And God began using training that went out to islands we've never been to. And over the course of these last 4 years, we've had contact from islands in the Eastern Caribbean saying, when are you coming? And so what looked like God was doing nothing, He was working all along. The other burden we had in the chaos was we needed missionaries to go back. And so we started praying for that. And God was silent for a while. But this past 2 months, God has raised up a couple that's willing to go back. And we are ecstatic about that.
So what was that time frame of when the hurricane and you start praying and then really things went from bad to worse and then COVID? I mean, no one could expect that, right? To now where you're starting to see kind of things shift and start to pick up again, so to speak.
Honestly, not until we were there in June. We went back to Abaco for the first time in June, and the people were starting to be hopeful. They were rebuilding, people were returning to the island. We were able to start traveling, taking supplies in. Before that, we had teams, small teams, 5 people that could go in and help with supplies and start help rebuilding. But I would say in the last year has been the most change that we've seen. And honestly, since the first of the year, God began answering our prayers about personnel to send back.
Wow. So, so you're looking at like 2.5 years of kind of crickets.
Yes. I liken it to that page between the Old Testament and the New, where in our Bibles 400 years passed, and we thought God was saying nothing or doing nothing. And He was creating roads and setting up this scenario for His Son to come and save the world. I think He does that often, where we think He's not at work. Oh, but He's at work. He just isn't revealing to us yet what that's going to be. And there were times Paul and I've had many discussions. He would put things on seminary websites. We would ask for people, pray, please pray, we need missionaries. Nothing would happen. And then in God's timing, and when His people were ready, He revealed that to us. Now, was He silent Himself? No, but He didn't reveal it to us until now.
That's such a helpful word. So, looking forward, what are some of your dreams? What are you hoping to see in this next season? Dream a little for us.
Okay. Our dream is for God to raise up workers for the harvest. Our dream is for people to know the backside of the postcard in person. Our dream is to reach as many of the Caribbean islands as possible with training, because we all know that while missionaries are effective, the most effective ministry happens when a national that understands the culture and understands the people and can stay there forever with them and have family ties and national ties and can disciple and walk alongside of them, that is going to change the world. And that's what we pray for, is that these leaders are going to be trained in order to make disciples. And island life, you can't just drive to the next state. You have to fly or take a boat. So they're more isolated than people can understand here. And so to raise up nationals on each one of these islands, and they're everywhere in the Caribbean, would be a dream, that people would understand the Caribbean people need missionaries. A lot of times we look at a map and say, oh, it says Christian, but less than 14% of the Caribbean are evangelical Christians. It was colonized for hundreds of years and left. And those people have been left for generations. And so that would be a huge dream for people to understand what's really going on there in the future.
So, Lisa, I would love to know a little bit more. What encouragement could you offer people who are in that season of waiting?
You know, I think trusting the character of God and who He is, what He does is good. Even when we wait, I would love to tell you I'm good at it. I'm not.
No.
Wait, I say, is a 4-letter word. It's hard. But I think for us to understand that God knows when we need things and that we may not be ready for them yet and that He is always working. We think that wait means He's not active. Wait for us means we're not ready, but God is always active. And He has been from the beginning of time for us. God has always been. And so if anyone's waiting, we're all waiting on something. We all have a prayer that we've been waiting. We have relationships, we're waiting. But God is not still. He's at work. Just stand, be strong, and know that God will answer when He's ready and when we are ready.
That's such a great word to end on. Thank you so much for being a part of this today. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to post a link, and this is your favorite part, so I'm going to throw it to you.
In the show notes.
Maybe not favorite, but something you really enjoy. Yeah, we'll put a link to your ministry, so if people want to find out more, they can click on that.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.
Enjoyed it.